Machine translation is just as accurate and effective as human translation. Being in this business, I actually hear this from friends and relatives a lot. Oh, well, technology has come so far that what you do is really obsolete. Well, for most organizations, that is simply not true. There have been many technological advances, and there's a lot of interesting products out on the market that can provide translations in some way, shape, or form. If anything, this only means that the buyer needs to be sharper, more aware of who they're dealing with and what they're getting for their money. Online, if you do a search, you'll find everything from free translation services such as Google Translate or Babelfish to, at the other end of the extreme, trained databases where someone has invested a lot of energy teaching the database to understand specific content. These databases can exist in the cloud, or they might be proprietary systems that are offered by a translation organization. And there are a lot of very reputable translation organizations out there today that use a hybrid offering, which is machine translate and edit, which is a completely different service from human translation backed up by a second human editor. So in order to choose among these offerings out there or decide if they're even appropriate for your specific needs, you need to understand a little bit about what they are and what they entail. Machine translate and edit means that you're popping your content into some sort of a database. Perhaps it's owned by the vendor that you're working with. And then at the back end, an editor is trying to make sense out of some of the stuff that popped out of that database. You were talking about things like grammar, sentence structure, context, things that the database couldn't properly understand in translation of the files. Now, if you're a manufacturer and you've got hundreds of products and you've got new versions coming out every month, your documentation might have an extremely short shelf life. And if that's the case, then machine translation and edit might work very well for you. If an error gets introduced into one of your manuals, it doesn't matter because a month from now that manual will be in the trash and you'll be on to the next version. However, if you're like most businesses who translate a manual or a brochure and then they use it for 2 or 3 years, it is an issue if you've got an error inserted in that document. And so that might not be the most appropriate tool for you. Some of the databases that are out there will lock you into a single vendor's proprietary platform, or they might actually be crowdsourcing the translations so that, one, you don't know who's providing those translations or what their qualifications are, and two, they're incorporating your content into their database. Now, buried in there is a couple of really big issues for clients. One, they like to know the qualifications of who's providing their translation, and two, they have issues with confidentiality and they don't like the idea that their content might get out there. So again, if you're going to go down this path, you want to be aware of exactly what's being sold and how it's being provided. For most businesses, for most practical applications, the technologies that are out there are not what's needed to meet their business objectives. Unless you're okay with whatever you get at one end of the spectrum, or you have a lot of resources to invest in training a system at the other end of the spectrum, human translation with a documented quality control process is still the best and most cost-effective tool to use for your important business communications. Even on Google's website, if you go to their frequently asked questions about their translation tools, they'll tell you that this is not the most effective means of translating important content. Language is extremely complex. Concepts don't easily convert from one language to another. A canned ham is not the same as a canned speech. There needs to be context, and a human translator, professional linguist, is the correct resource to help convey your message with the same meaning and the same tone as you originally intended. Nuanced communications, such as marketing speak or very precise technical content, are both difficult to translate. So marketing materials at one end of the spectrum, engineering materials at the other end of the spectrum. Both of these require a translator who can fully comprehend your subject matter and your message, and they need to understand it in the language that they wrote it and be a native speaker in the language in which you hope to provide it. And they need the skills and the discipline to relay your message appropriately. Many times the errors aren't glaring. The canned ham, canned speech, all right, that's very amusing. But more often, what you can end up with is a message that just falls flat or doesn't make a lot of sense. That is, you don't make the impact you wanted and you don't end up achieving your goal. I talked with one prospect about a week ago. They manufacture a product for eye irrigation. They had their stuff translated. They sent it over to their German distributor. The German distributor made the comment, well, your translation is technically correct. However, the term used for irrigation was more appropriate for use in agriculture than it was for use in medicine. These sorts of things happen all the time, particularly if you select a resource that doesn't offer the subject matter expertise. Another industrial client mentioned to me that his Spanish translation of instructions for handling the equipment ended up being instructions for fondling the equipment. Again, not quite what he was looking for, and also a little bit creepy. Fast and cheap is not the same as accurate and complete. The lure of these online resources is speed and cost. That does sound promising, but accuracy is at risk when you're using machines to translate complex communication. If you're working in an industry where mistakes are costly and potentially dangerous, knowing that your translation work is accurate is extremely important. Not only will it save you time and money in the long run, it'll also save you a lot of aggravation. Here at ILS, our translators are assigned to projects based on their subject matter expertise. Actually, they'll walk away if they encounter subject matter that's outside of their wheelhouse, because it'll take them too long to do it, and they know that they won't be able to provide the quality that we expect from them. Free online translations are worth exactly what you pay, nothing. Except for limited circumstances. We refer to this as gisting. If somebody sends you an email and you just want to know what topic they're talking about, what this is, then it might be appropriate to pop that into a free online translator. Sometimes even projects that don't seem extremely crucial can still come up with embarrassing results using these types of services. We had a local catering company that was putting on an event for a client. The client had guests coming from Canada, so they wanted French signage in addition to the English on the buffet to tell the guests what they were eating. So they went in, they popped their signs into a free online translator, and they sent them to us for review. Their wild rice became chaotic rice. Their turkey sandwich became a sandwich from the country of Turkey. We can laugh about these sorts of things, but really they're not so funny when it's a surgical device, a chemical label, or a rapidly spinning electric saw. We know that there's never enough time or money, but what solution is going to best meet your objectives? A meticulous professional who's going to ask questions and be sure they understand your context, or the most common usage of your wording that's pulled off of a free online translator?